In 2019, WeWork filed to go public. Investors read the prospectus. Within 6 weeks, the company's valuation collapsed from $47 billion to $8 billion. The IPO was pulled. The CEO was fired. And the man who had built WeWork into one of the most valuable startups in the world walked away with $1.7 billion as severance. WeWork eventually filed for bankruptcy in 2023, a company that had once been worth more than Boeing, more than General Motors, more than the entire commercial real estate industry it was supposedly disrupting. Here is what makes this story remarkable. None of it was hidden. The losses were disclosed. The conflicts of interest were documented. The cash burn was disclosed. Investors simply chose not to look until the moment they had to. WeWork didn't collapse because of fraud. It collapsed because an entire industry of sophisticated investors decided that a company losing $2 billion a year was worth $47 billion, and then one day, without warning, changed their minds. This is the story of the most expensive reality check in startup history. Adam Neumann founded WeWork in 2010 with a simple idea: rent office space by the month instead of the year. The pitch was straightforward. Small companies and freelancers needed office space but couldn't afford long leases. WeWork would sign the long leases, subdivide the space, and rent desks and offices at a premium. The business model was essentially co-working arbitrage. It worked. WeWork grew fast. The spaces were well designed, the coffee was free, and the communal energy was real. By 2014, WeWork had locations across America. By 2016, it was operating in 15 countries. But Neumann had a larger vision, or at least a larger vocabulary. He didn't describe WeWork as a real estate company. He described it as a consciousness-raising enterprise that was elevating humanity. He talked about living in WeWork apartments, working at WeWork offices, sending children to WeWork schools. He wanted to be WeWork's CEO for the next 100 years. The investors who heard this pitch had a choice: take the words literally or understand them as the performance they were and evaluate the underlying business on its merits. Most chose a third option. They decided the vision was so compelling that normal financial metrics didn't apply. That decision cost them billions. In January 2017, Masayoshi Son of SoftBank met Adam Neumann. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Son reviewed a presentation on Neumann's phone in the back of a car and committed to investing $4.4 billion. His reasoning, shared afterward, was that in a fight between a crazy person and a sane person, he preferred to bet on the crazy person. That investment valued WeWork at $20 billion for a company that had never turned a profit and was losing money on every location it opened. SoftBank followed with another $10 billion in subsequent rounds. The valuation climbed to $47 billion. The money enabled everything that followed. With essentially unlimited capital, WeWork signed leases on every major city in the world. It expanded into China, India, Latin America, Southeast Asia. It acquired companies, a school, a gym, a wave pool manufacturer. It moved into residential apartments under the brand We Live. The more money flowed in, the more Neumann spent, and the higher the valuation climbed, because growth at any cost looked like momentum, and momentum attracted more investment. It was a loop, and it only worked as long as someone kept feeding it. In August 2019, WeWork filed its S-1, the document required before a public offering. The S-1 is one of the most scrutinized documents in finance. Everything goes in: revenue, losses, risks, related party transactions, executive compensation. For a company that had raised money from private investors for 9 years on the basis of Neumann's vision, this was the first time the public got to look at the actual numbers. They were extraordinary. WeWork had lost $1.9 billion in 2018 on revenue of $1.8 billion. It was losing more than it earned. Its leases committed it to $47 billion in future payments. It had no credible path to profitability. But the conflicts of interest were what drew the most attention. Neumann owned several buildings that he personally leased back to WeWork, collecting rent from his own company. He had borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars against his WeWork shares. He had sold the trademark for the word "we" to the company for $5.9 million, then been forced to give the money back after journalists pointed it out. The prospectus used the word "community" 150 times. It used the word "profit" once. Within days of the filing, analysts and journalists began publicly questioning whether WeWork was worth anything close to $47 billion. Within 6 weeks, the IPO was withdrawn. After the IPO collapsed, WeWork began running out of money. The company had been burning through cash at a rate that assumed a public offering would replenish it. Without the IPO proceeds, it had weeks of runway left. SoftBank stepped in with a rescue package, but attached a condition. Neumann had to go. He went. He took with him $1.7 billion in stock sales, loan forgiveness, and consulting fees, the largest golden parachute in startup history, paid to a founder who had just presided over the destruction of $39 billion in paper value. The new management cut half the workforce. Locations were closed. The vision of 100-year WeWork communities was replaced by urgent conversations about which leases could be broken. WeWork went public in 2021 through a special purpose acquisition, a backdoor into the markets that avoided the scrutiny of a traditional IPO. The valuation was $9 billion. By the end of 2022, the stock had lost 98% of its value. In November 2023, WeWork filed for bankruptcy. The company that had once signed the largest private office lease in Manhattan history couldn't pay its rent. WeWork's collapse is a story about money, but it is mostly a story about belief. Sophisticated investors with access to financials, analysts, and advisors chose to believe that a company losing $2 billion a year was worth $47 billion. They chose to believe this because other sophisticated investors believed it, and because the alternative, admitting you had invested at a wildly inflated valuation, was worse than continuing to believe. Adam Neumann was unusual, but the system that enabled him was not. Every major venture capital firm in Silicon Valley understood that late-stage startup valuations were disconnected from fundamentals. They understood that growth was being funded by SoftBank's Vision Fund at prices that made no financial sense. They participated anyway because the alternative was missing out. WeWork's IPO prospectus didn't reveal a fraud. It revealed a real estate company that had convinced the investment community to treat it like a technology company. The moment investors were forced to read the actual numbers, the spell broke. $47 billion became $8 billion, became zero. And Adam Neumann, who had never personally lost a dollar throughout the entire collapse, moved to Miami and started a new company.